Namaste, everyone. I'm going to give you a Kriya for the full moon Virgo that is happening in early March 2020. So you can refer to my full moon Virgo discussion I have in a separate video for more guidance on the Virgo full moon and kind of what's going on and how we can benefit from it and how we can better experience this transformation that's happening. So this particular Kriya, we're going to focus on the North Node. So Virgo, like I've mentioned, Virgo is very much about the inner child wounds, right? And it does represent our past wounds regarding expressing ourselves and standing in our truth, right? Standing in our truth. Virgo is the trauma, we could say, associated with Virgo is, we know, crucifixion, right? We think of Jesus, we think of Mother Mary, we think of Mary Magdalene, we think of a lot of, you say, earth angels have been crucified, right? Even when it comes to Kuan Yin, White Buffalo Woman, there is this crucifixion, which basically is shame, right? So the shadow of Virgo is shame, and how do we heal from shame? Because shame is it can be one of the most violent sort of attacks on humankind is shame, right? Because when you get into that shame, you can just destroy yourself or you can destroy other people, right? We talk about beating people down, we talk about stoning people, all these kinds of things associated with the shadow of Virgo. So really, North Node, really in your astrological chart, it represents the energy that's pulling you forward, right? The energy that's pulling you forward, what you desire to transform majorly in this particular life. So when we think of the North Star, right, in the North Star, we think of very much like the Underground Railroad, right? Following the North Star represents the future, right? And during, we know that this period of where we were traveling through the Underground Railroad, the North Star basically represented a future of freedom, a future of liberation, a future of immense transformation, a future of healing, right? So going to the North Star for many, right? It's an image of transformation, right? Stepping into a reality where you are liberated, where you are free, right? Where you are released of the chains of shame, right? Where you're released of the chains of shame. So the North Star for us in this particular Virgo full moon can very much represent the healing of the chains of shame, right? We are shamed directly, indirectly, we're shamed from the side, we're shamed from down below, we're shamed from up high. Like there's all these kinds of areas in which we are targeted by our culture, our society, and just even internally with a lot of these beliefs that we have that are from generations of trauma due to shackles of shame, right? So Virgo's like, let's break through the shackles of shame, follow your North Star, which is like going through the Underground Railroad and following the future, right? The future of freedom, the future of sovereignty, right? Where you can be independent mind and not be shamed for being independent mind, right? So the North Star in astrological chart does represent where you're going in this incarnation, right? The kind of the spiritual growth that you intend to experience in this life. For example, I have my North Node in Scorpio. So Scorpio, North Node, Pluto, right, is very much about I desire to experience major transformation when it comes to relationship, particularly soul connection, like what it means to have a soul connection. What does it mean to even discuss about soul connection? What does it mean to feel? What does it mean to come into the embodiment of my soul? Right, so that's kind of the energy that's pushing me forward, right, is the intention to embody this soul energy, right? And everything in my life that's placed in my life is basically guiding me towards that, right? So everything that has been just placed in my path for many years has been all about kind of guiding me, kind of pushing me away from my south node, which is past lives and what I've mastered in past lives, and pushing me towards this self-discovery, right? This new horizon, we'll say, right? And that has to do with the embodiment of the soul and the soul connection and the sort of depths of emotion, right? And the sort of powerhouse of emotion, the sort of shamanistic perspective of, being a chameleon, being multidimensional, being multi-talented, right? Being you can say a sort of having this sense of emotional strength, because very much shaman is emotional strength, right? Because it takes a lot of strength to navigate through this polarized planet, right? So that's kind of what everything that's put in my place is, to push me there, because I intend to have that sort of mastery in this incarnation, right? So the south node represents where you're coming from. So for example, my south node is the polarity of Scorpio, right? So think of every zodiac it's a coin, two sides to one coin, right? Two sides to one coin, right? And they're basically opposites, right? On the wheel, the zodiac wheel. So opposite of Scorpio is Taurus, two sides of one coin, right? So Taurus, my past life incarnational mastery, right? Because South Node has to do with things you're really good at, right? You've done it really well, right? So Taurus is about a master builder, right? Taurus is about a master builder, right? A lot of incarnations, being self-reliant, being independent, being self-sufficient, being you could say, a builder, a master builder, right? And that corresponds with me being you could say a manifester, right? That's kind of in the physical, like getting things done, being reliable, kind of being fixed in the way that, I do things. I do it really hard, go hard, right? But get it done type of thing, and do it very well, right? It's not half-assed, right? It's like a high quality of work ethic, right? So that's where I'm coming from. So in this incarnation, I have this sort of skill set of having a strong work ethic, or having a strong determination, or a strong sort of ability to stand my ground and to hold my position, right? As though you are like a manager of your own life, or a manager of a larger being, right? That is basically, I'm using that previous mastery, and I'm using it to help navigate me into this new horizon, which is vastly different, right? Taurus is about being grounded, right? It's about having a routine. It's about being structured. It's about having a very an identity, right? That is you could say a status or a caliber, right? Because Taurus is about, I have a status, I have a caliber, I have an excellency about the way I approach life and the way I make things happen and build things, and people count on me, right? That's why I have to stand my ground, because a lot of people count on me. That's why I'm self-sufficient, self-reliant, right? I can kind of multitask in the mind of getting many various things completed, right? So that's sort of an ingrained, like heavy, like, okay, been there, done it very well, right? And the Scorpio is totally opposite. The Scorpio is very much about Pluto, right, is very, very much about this sort of intensive emotional healing, right? Taurus, when we think of Venus, Venus is like the beauty, the luck, the fortune, right? The prosperity, right? The kind of the caliber, the status, the excellence, right? Well, Scorpio is very much about the the emotional healing, the intensity of emotion, right? The powerhouse of emotion, right? The emotion that can be ugly and painful, and dealing with the human condition of suffering and rising above that, right? The phoenix rising out of the ashes, right? It's kind of like this snake. You shed the snake skin and you can become a Hulk kind of thing, right? So that's kind of very much stepping into like esoterics, which is about like mystery and about like reality that is outside of the common, mediocrity, right? Or the common sort of status, right? It's exploring, going out there, right? Going into the deep of what's in life and what's in the person and what's in society and what's in, the history, right? It's like a deep hunger for like esoterics, right? So, and for you, you can go on, discover your own sort of placement, right? The two sides to one coin, your north node and your south node, and you'll see how your south node is affecting you in this life, right? And just who you are as a character and as a person, right? For me, Taurus is about a character, right? So, Taurus, if you have a Taurus, it's about character development, character development, character development. And really how we get a character is how we're viewed in the eyes of others. And people view us on how dependable, how reliable, how consistent we are, right? How dependable, how reliable, how consistent we are. And that's kind of how we are ranked in the sort of status of life when it comes to the way people view us, right? If we're trustworthy, or if we are the person that is going to get things done, right? Is how reliable, dependable, consistent we are. So that's like character. Everything about your character is how reliable, dependable, and consistent you are with whatever it is that you're doing, right? With your time and your space and your energy. So, and the Scorpio is very, very different. Scorpio is very much about experiencing the intensity of emotion for powerful healing, right? And when you do, for example, if you have this placement, a lot of you, when you have a strong Scorpio or even Pluto, especially in the North Node, it can also represent that you've had past incarnations of, could be trauma in some way. Because when Scorpio comes around and it's smack in your face, you have a lot of healing that's there. Like, and usually when you have a lot of healing that's just available to you, it means that you've had some tough life lessons in previous incarnations. Like you've been around the block, right? In ways that you've faced some dangers, you've faced some things, right? You've been around the block, you've faced some things, because when Scorpios smack on your face like that and very prominent in your energy, it definitely means that you've been through, you could say, some dark emotions, right? But not only have you been through the dark emotions, you've kind of risen above it. Like you've come to this place where you're no longer letting the human condition kind of suck you down into the suffering where everybody's just in the dirt grabbing each other, right? Because we know that's a reality, one of many, but that's a reality. So a lot of the Scorpios, they have a lot of power of emotion, right? And they can use that as fuel for manifestation, right? So Scorpio, for me, right, again, if you have this placement, like Taurus and Scorpio, both powerful manifestors, right? And if you have that, it does means that you definitely have a manifestation ability that you've anchored in your consciousness through multiple incarnations, right? Taurus is like the Venus, it's like the beauty, it's the character. Scorpio is the emotional maturity, that emotional grit and emotional power, right? And they're both, like, we manifest through our emotions and our character, right? So it's very, very interesting. And when we think of going back in the Vedic wheel to the Scorpio age, right, long thousands of years ago, Scorpio age, that was an age, we can go back to ancient Egypt, and that was an age when Scorpio, thousands of years ago, 10, 20, maybe 30,000, getting closer to way going back. Scorpio, that particular period in ancient Egypt, was one of esoterics. So a lot of the Egyptian hieroglyphics, the Egyptian sort of theology, the Egyptian spirituality is very much, a lot of it was developed during the Scorpio age on thousands of years ago, right? That, again, that Scorpio age brought about this hunger for the soul and embodying the soul and kind of the emotional sort of power and how to have emotional power, right? The shamanistic sort of perspective, right? Which is like multi-talented, multi-dimensional, being a chameleon, right? And if you go back to a lot of the ancient Egyptian sort of foundational even teachings or practices, this culture was very much multi-talented, multifaceted. They had a different perspective, kind of a shamanistic perspective that gave them these sort of altered states of consciousness and these they were really focused on the soul embodiment, or the soul, and the soul throughout incarnations, and the whole afterlife, the death, and the process of the soul, and the rhythm of the soul, and why does the soul choose particular life lessons, and that kind of thing. And that really brought about the expansion in astrology for a lot of Egyptians, the mapping out the soul, and like, why does the soul travel, and where does the soul go, and what are the dimensions of the soul, right? The other realities that the soul is inhabiting simultaneously, right? And that desire, that mapping of the soul, led to astrology, right, for the ancient Egyptians, like a form of astrology, which is you're creating a sort of blueprint of the soul's sort of navigation, and the whole life lesson, the whole challenge, and the whole sort of movement. It's almost like you're sort of mapping out the movement of the soul in the various areas of the self, and what it means to be human, and what it means to have these many facets, these many chambers of human being. And if you go to the ancient Egypt, but go even deeper, they're definitely about the many chambers, the many aspects, the many dimensions of the self, and how that soul kind of travels through this sort of wheel of time, or this wheel of sort of self-mastery, and how they obtain knowledge and wisdom, and how they organize it, and how they sort of transform and sort of repattern. Right? That's all about that Scorpio. It's all about that Pluto right there, right? And a lot of ancient Egyptians were into that kind of thing. And a lot of, even when we think of like the Cabal, and we think about even when we think of even like Vedic astrology, evolutionary astrology, it really does come from what we know like a Scorpio age on this planet, which that Scorpio age, I would see it was matriarchal and patriarchal. And there's a balance, and you can see that balance in hieroglyphics of ancient Egypt. Like, you can see that there's a balance between the man and the woman. And then when you start to go even history that's closer to our time right now, you can see it starts to change. You can see that the man, the pharaoh, becomes a lot bigger, and the women become not as big in the sort of depiction of them, which represents the men having more power, right? When the men are big and sort of the you could say that the images, right, that are engraved on these monolithic structures, it does represent that the power of man is growing. So you can kind of even probably map out when the power of man begins to grow, and the women they remain consistent, right? Their power kind of, and the man's power gets slightly bigger over time, right? But there was a period, as we know, even Egyptologists know, that there's a period where you can see that the status of man and the status of woman were the same. But, and even going further back, you could see the status of woman actually had a significant, more power than the man, and the way that she was the spiritual leader. She was the guidance system to a man, right? She's the one that would tame the beast of the man, right? The ego, right? She was the guidance. She was the spiritual leader. She was the spiritual teacher. So the man would go to the women for spiritual teaching, right? And this was basically done in the age of Scorpio, where the women would be like these spiritual leaders, and the men would basically come, and they would enjoy, right? They would enjoy feeding their desire to soul embodiment, right, by listening to these women discuss about esoterics and astrology and the sort of mapping of the soul. And that information that was given to the men would therefore be used to help the men lead, right? Lead, right? And even moving down, right, getting closer to our period right now, right? You can see that a lot of men did go to these sort of, they were very much appreciative of, you could say, the lineage of women who would be studying these esoterics, right? But then there was a period abrupt that a lot of that completely just sort of was like hushed and like completely just like stopped, right? No more women of lineages studying these esoterics, no more, right? We don't need it anymore. This is the era of men. Men don't need the women. Men just need the men, right? So that's kind of about the Scorpio age, which I thought was kind of interesting, because for me, I have memories of being in the Scorpio age long thousands of years ago in ancient Egypt, and it was definitely a very different time, right? Nothing like what's going on right now, right? And there was more of a balance of the scales between the patriarch, the matriarch, and when it came to the balance between just human being and the hemispheres of the brain. Like, we had the sort of mysticism, we had the sort of hunger for esoterics, but then we also had the mathematical, scientific perspective that was pretty consolidated and pretty grounded, right? And we were both respectful of both sides of the sort of brain, right? We were respectful. We didn't shame each other. We weren't at each other's throats and, in debate constantly, like hitting, butting heads. We were not doing that. We were very respectful of, the arts and the science. Arts being kind of like, the science of art, the healing arts, right? And the sort of magic, the mysticism, the sort of esoterics, and we were very respectful of the mathematical, the scientific sort of grounded perspective. We needed both, and we included both in the society, right? So very, very different time that we know that hasn't been that way for a long time on this planet. But I remember that, so coming full circle, and you can even meditate upon this in your North Node. Having that North Node Scorpio and having these many incarnations in the Scorpio age thousands of years ago, it's almost like a coming a full circle, right? Like the wisdom I gained in the Scorpio age was very, very intense. Like it was very, like the information age was a lot of download, right? And then coming to the period this life I'm in now, having that Scorpio, it's like coming full circle. Like the wisdom has been carried with me for ever since. The wisdom of that age is now the wisdom that's kind of resurfacing in me through the Scorpio North Node. So whatever North Node you have, you can even go back in your past lives, even through meditation or like self-hypnosis that you can find in many places, right? YouTube, and you can kind of trace this North Node and see how this North Node, again, it's like coming full circle, right? Everything's about this sense of mastery. It's about a sense of coming full circle, right? Coming into completion, right? And for myself, since I have I am a 10 life path, you can even look at your life path, right? And you can kind of put it in your North Node as well. So put it side by side. So I have a 10 life path and I have a Scorpio North Node. So that combination means that I have some sort of mastery over esoterics or some sort of wisdom, because that's what Scorpio is about, right? So let's say, if you can even put a different, you could say the 4, right? You have a 4 life path, and let's say you have Leo North Node or something like that, right? And you can see, okay, my sort of incarnational sort of, propulsion or what's potentiating me. 4 is about this sort of expression of the emotion, the heart, matters of the heart, right? It's good luck in the heart, experiencing of the love. Leo very much is about the experiencing of creativity, so articulating the heart, right? And having this as a mastery over that, right? Of having this sort of ecstatic experience of the heart and expressing that and shining it and radiating it out. So you can do your own. You could put your life path numeral number and your North Node side by side, and you can just kind of play with it in your head, learn about both and the South Node, and just kind of play with it and see kind of how it connects with your past lives, and connect with how it's coming full circle and how it's showing up in your life, and how things have been placed in your life to really push you there. And this was something that we would do in the age of Scorpio. Like in Egypt, we would literally, when we had a baby, we would map out their astrology. We would look at every aspect, every chamber, every dimension of that baby. And we would organize their life according to the astrology and the placements, like the houses and the planets. And we would organize a child's early development based off of their soul map, right? Their soul map and what their soul desired in this incarnation. right? We would do that. We would use a Vedic, kind of like Vedic astrology, right? Mapping the soul of the child, reviewing it, and then we would basically kind of carve out their life, the structure of their life based on their soul travel through, their soul's travel, right? And we would look at what they need to heal, what their challenge is, what their gift is, where they're coming from in their past lives, where they're going in this life, right? And we would do that as parents, and particularly, the Scorpio age in ancient Egypt, right? Ancient Egypt, right? We don't really do that anymore except in small groups of individuals. But that's what we used to do. We would have a kid, and we wouldn't just like have a kid and just like, oh, here you go, just figure it out, A lot of us as parents, we would literally look at their astrology and we would map out their early development according to their soul's traveling, right? And their soul kind of intention, desire, and evolution for this life in both areas: emotional, intellectual, physical, spiritual. And we would see it all just by looking at the astrological chart. And then we would make plans accordingly for the child's growth and development, right? And then, by a certain age, right, Egypt, like 7 maybe to like 12, they would be off, because 7-12 years of intensive study, that's all it took, right? And we would still parent them, but they would basically they would already have such a very kind of, they would have already gathered so much sort of direction at 7 to 12 that they would just be off to the races. They wouldn't be like codependent on the parents and like attached, and they have no clue and just running around, just have like no idea what's going on, right? 7 to 12, the parent, the mother especially, would probably, she would set up the whole kind of plan, the whole routine of their whole early childhood according to the astrology. And then, by 12, they would be going to another sort of transition into a different sort of, phase of their life, where they would be more independent, more sovereign, right? They wouldn't be governed by the parents. They'd be doing their own thing, right? Because, that's just how it was, right? But a lot of days, like, people are like 18, like 25, and they're like going all these things. They have no clue. They have no clue. Like, we don't even figure it out until we're like 35 on this planet, right? It takes us 35 years to actually like understand like ourselves, right? Like to actually get a sense of like, okay, this is like my path, and like this is, this is like my healing, and this is my past lives, and this is my talents, and this is kind of the challenge that I need to, pay attention to. We'd be like 30, some people don't even get to like 55, and they're still like, huh? What? I don't know what I'm doing here, right? And that's the kind of the major downfall for a lot of us, is like, we figure it out, but then, our body's too fatigued because we've been running around wasting our energy on just doing whatever for whatever, right? And that's why this period of time is really called the experience, right? This is this experience whatever, do whatever, right? This is the time where, where we just experience whatever, do with that whatever, right? Have the experiences, because we're really like learning about the karma and like how the karma works. And a lot of people are kind of, the karma, so do whatever for whatever, and whatever to whatever, right? And that's a part of life, but there's also other area, like there's also learning and there's service. And learning and service is what the Scorpio age, ancient Egypt, focused more so on, rather than like, experience. You need it. It makes you very knowledgeable about, your habits, your ways, all that kind of stuff. But then there comes a point where experience becomes learned knowledge. You learn from it. And then it becomes service, which is like your dharma, like you actually, coming into, learn, having a sense of, okay, right, this is what I'm doing in life, like this is who I am, this is my character, like this is my independent thinking, that kind of thing, where you really come into like, who you are, what you want, right? And some of us don't figure it out until we've had a lot of experience, and then we're like 55 and then we're like, right, then we start to, understand about who we are and what we want. But in this different time, different Egyptian time, like, again, 7 to 12, these kids were like off to the races. Like they knew what they wanted, they knew who they were, because their whole life early on in the years was basically about their astrological chart. And the kids would basically be learning about their soul's map and about their soul's travel through having, you can say, activities that were based off of the strengths of their astrological chart, and how to kind of catalyst or activate that in them, and also the healing of the wounds and the sort of the mending of the weakness, or the awareness of the weakness, right? And the karma, right? The experiences of their karma and past lives, and how they can gain knowledge from their karma, and right, potentiate themselves into their dharma, right? Which is like, I am this person, like I'm a character, right? This is my character, like this is who I am, that kind of thing, and not being shaky and insecure about it, right? So that's what we're gonna kind of work on in this particular practice, is that North Node, right? And how we can better get to know ourselves, right? Through the North Node and the South Node, and also putting your life path number side by side with your North Node, and it will reveal a lot to you about kind of where you've been. Again, your soul's travel. Everything about particularly Scorpio or Pluto is your soul's traveling. You have a desire, hunger to know about the soul's traveling. The soul, remote viewing, and you could say esoterics, and the sort of astral projection, and the sort of even yogic science, like all about the soul's traveling. The soul's traveling, right? And the sort of, the connection of the soul with another human being, and the whole consciousness, the whole emergence of consciousness with another human being, and how profound that is, right? Because Scorpio, in many ways, again, if you have it anywhere in your chart, it does represent the sort of emergence of two individuals of that consciousness, and experiencing of profound sexual healing, like profound sexual energy, right? So a lot of everyone has Scorpio in their chart somewhere. It's about profound sexual healing, profound sexual connection. So Scorpio, the whole, one night stand, the whole fling, or the whole, casual thing won't work for Scorpio. You could try it and it's not going to satisfy Scorpio. Scorpio needs to have the emergence with a person, and a lot of times you don't merge with a person just one night stand or the casual stuff, right? It's just a body thing. But Scorpio is like, I want to have sexual healing. I want to experience the power of sexuality, and how that power of sexuality brings me this sort of ecstatic experience of my soul, and the soul of this person in the past lives, and the whole universe, and that kind of, that kind of powerhouse of sexual energy, right? So we think of Scorpio as like powerhouse sexual energy, sexual energy. Like, the creative energy of Scorpio is called the serpent, right? The serpent, right? Which basically means when you see that serpent, it represents like that powerhouse of sexual energy actually is the powerhouse that, if you kind of conduct it towards anything, manifest instantly. That sexual energy, if you conduct it or channel it towards any particular area of your life, you can heal anything, right? You can build anything, because that sexual energy is what we call the primal energy, the energy of creation, the primal energy, the energy that brought everything together, that, emerged all these different elements of what, atoms and particles, merged them all together to make the very basic, you could say, nucleus. And that's what Scorpio is. It's like, knows how to bring all this sort of, elements together in this complete sort of unification, right? And that's why Scorpio is known as the, you can say the manifestor, the shaman, in the way that Scorpio can basically knows how to bring things together, right? Energy together, knows how to call in the universe and bring it together in this physical body for manifestation or for healing, or what that is. Knows how to bring people through this multiverse, knows how to guide people through their emotions, knows how to, stand in the emotion powerhouse and channel it directively, right? So that's just about Scorpio, because everybody has Scorpio, regardless if you have heavy Scorpio, right, like I do, or you have like a somewhat so Scorpio, right? We all have Pluto. And if you see Pluto in your chart, it represents your evolutionary necessity, which is basically saying this is what's going to go down for you in this life. So either you like it, you don't like it, oh well, this is what's going down for you. And it's quite exciting, it's exhilarating, it's intense, but it's actually, the intensities can be quite ecstatic, and that's what human beings want. They want to have this ecstatic awakening. No human being wants to have a weak life force, dull, weak mediocrity. People want to have an ecstatic experience of their life force. That's just human nature, right?